The serpent of Genesis was not what you think. The Hebrew text reveals its true identity. Have you ever imagined that the serpent of Genesis, the one that deceived Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, might be much more than it seems? We've heard about this story since we were little, but what if the truth behind this figure was much more mysterious? What if the serpent had a dark secret that went unnoticed for centuries? Today, we're going to travel to the heart of the original Hebrew text to discover a new side to this creature. Get ready, because what you're about to discover could completely change the way you see this ancient story. Imagine that you've always heard a story one way, but suddenly someone comes along and says, "Hey, what if there's another side to this story?" That's more or less what happens with the story of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. We grew up hearing that it was just a snake that deceived Eve, right? But in fact, there are people who think that this serpent is more than just a snake. It may have a very different role in the story, something we never imagined. It's like a mystery. Is the serpent just an animal, or is there something more behind it? Now look how curious. In the original text of the Bible, written in Hebrew, the word used for serpent is nash. But here comes the cool part. Nash doesn't just mean snake. This word can also mean someone who has magical powers or secret knowledge. If this discovery has made you curious to know more about mysteries like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss the next revelations that may change the way you understand these ancient stories. It's as if the serpent were like those wise characters in movies who know something important, but don't always tell everything at once. This makes us wonder, was it just trying to trick Eve, or was there more to it, as if it were offering special knowledge? Scholars have debated a great deal about who or what the serpent in Genesis really was. Some believe that the serpent was not a literal snake, but something symbolic. They say that Nash could represent chaos, as a force that disrupts the order created by God. Others believe that the serpent could be a fallen angel, or even a figure similar to Prometheus from Greek mythology, who brought wisdom to humanity, even in defiance of the gods. These ideas make us think that the serpent may be a much more complex character than just a villain in the story. Here things get even more interesting. Some experts believe that the serpent could be a type of minor god or a divine being. In several ancient cultures, such as Egypt and Mesopotamia, serpents were seen as symbols of wisdom and even immortality. They were powerful creatures and were often respected. So, instead of thinking of the serpent as an evil creature, some people think that it could have an important role, bringing knowledge or helping people in some way. Kind of surprising, right? Now, another idea that scholars suggest is that the serpent represents chaos. You know, that mess that comes and changes everything? Well, the serpent can symbolize exactly that. In the Garden of Eden, everything was peaceful and orderly, but when the serpent appears, it kind of breaks this harmony, defying God's rules. In many ancient stories, as in mythologies of other peoples, serpents are associated with monsters that bring disorder. They are seen as creatures that test the limits of what is right or wrong. Just like in Genesis, where the serpent leads Adam and Eve to question the rules. Now think about it. Have you ever been curious to know something that you were told was forbidden? Like when they say, "Don't touch that," it seems that curiosity only increases, right? Well, the story of Adam and Eve is a bit like that. The serpent appears and starts to talk to Eve about the forbidden fruit, but it wasn't just a question of disobedience. Here, the serpent can symbolize something bigger, the human desire to understand the world, to learn, even if it means breaking the rules. It's as if Eve was at a crossroads, between following orders or seeking new and powerful knowledge. And the serpent was there, not only to tempt, but also to raise this big question. It's like that story of when you're about to learn something important in life. You know that following the rules is safe, but sometimes it's through curiosity that we discover incredible things. Imagine that the serpent is like a guide that leads Eve to a new understanding of the world. When it talks about the fruit and promises that Eve will know the difference between good and evil, it is not just a trick. It is almost as if the serpent is offering a key to a new world, a world where Eve can have more power over her choices and better understand her life. This makes us wonder, could the act of eating the forbidden fruit not be just disobedience, but rather a moment of growth and discovery? It is as if Eve is taking a giant step towards self-knowledge. This desire to know more is something that we all face at different times in our lives. Sometimes the search for knowledge leads us to make difficult choices, but it can also help us grow and better understand who we are. Let us imagine that the serpent is not just a negative character, but someone who plays a crucial role in the history of humanity. When Eve eats the fruit, it is not only a story of the fall, it is also a sign of transformation. The serpent, then, can be seen as a catalyst that begins a new phase in Adam and Eve's lives, leading them to a greater understanding of the world and of themselves. It's like a learning journey. Think of when you learn to ride a bike. It's hard at first, and you might even fall a few times, but each attempt teaches you something new. The same idea applies to the story of the serpent and the fruit. Their disobedience is not just a mistake, but also a step towards growth and wisdom. The serpent, then, teaches us that oftentimes we need to challenge what we know in order to truly evolve. And that's an important lesson we can apply to our lives. This new way of viewing the serpent in Genesis raises several interesting questions about our understanding of the story. If the serpent is not simply an evil figure, but an agent that contributes to human knowledge and evolution, this changes how we think about God and the divine plan. It makes us reflect on the nature of temptation and free will. The temptation of the serpent can be seen as part of human growth, not just an act of disobedience. Thus, the search for knowledge and wisdom can be interpreted as an essential part of spiritual and human development. In addition, this new perspective invites us to consider how the complexity of biblical characters, including the serpent, can enrich our faith. It suggests that ancient texts have layers of meaning that go beyond traditional interpretations, and that understanding these nuances can help us have a deeper relationship with biblical stories. Finally, it is essential to understand that reading biblical texts in their original languages, such as Hebrew, can reveal deeper and more nuanced meanings. Studying these texts allows us to see the stories in a new way, considering the cultural and historical context in which they were written. When we understand the complexity of the characters and the nuances of the words, we can better appreciate the lessons these stories offer us. This helps us to see the Bible not just as a rule book, but as a set of narratives that explore the human experience in rich and multifaceted ways. In addition, this approach fosters a more informed and enriched understanding of faith, encouraging a more meaningful connection to biblical teachings. By recognizing the complexity of the serpent's story, for example, we are challenged to think about the pursuit of knowledge and the dilemmas we face in our own lives. The story of the serpent in Genesis, often seen as a narrative of disobedience and the fall, reveals surprising depth when we look beyond traditional interpretations. Seeing the serpent as a symbol of knowledge and human evolution transforms our understanding not only of the story, but also of the relationship between the divine and the human. The temptation Eve faces represents an opportunity for growth and self-discovery, showing that curiosity and the search for more knowledge can be essential parts of the spiritual journey. This new perspective invites us to reflect on the role of free will, the complexity of human decisions, and the theological implications that arise from this understanding. Recognizing the serpent as a catalyst that drives us to question and seek knowledge helps us see the Bible in a richer and more meaningful way. By exploring these layers of meaning, we can deepen our faith and expand our understanding of human nature, knowledge, and wisdom that accompany us throughout life. This reflection encourages us to face difficulties and the search for knowledge with an open mind and heart, recognizing that the journey of learning is full of challenges and rewards. If this discovery has made you curious to know more about mysteries like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss the next revelations that can change the way you understand these ancient stories. Extended conclusion: a new perspective on the serpent in Genesis. The story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden is one of the most well-known in the Bible. But do we really understand all of its details? When we think of the serpent tempting Eve to eat the forbidden fruit, we often picture a literal, treacherous animal responsible for the downfall of humanity. But when we go back to the original Hebrew text and look more deeply, the traditional interpretation begins to seem simplistic. In fact, what we discover is that the serpent can be a much more complex symbol, with meanings that go beyond what most of us imagined. In Genesis, the Hebrew word used for serpent is naash, which does not exclusively refer to a literal snake. This word has a range of meanings in ancient Hebrew. In addition to serpent, it can also be translated as charmer or one who has hidden knowledge. This alone gives us pause. Are we talking about just any animal or an entity with abilities and wisdom that go beyond the physical world? This new perspective opens up the possibility that the serpent is a much more enigmatic and important figure than just a villain in the biblical story. Imagine this. Rather than just a malicious snake, the serpent may symbolize Eve's and humanity's desire for knowledge and self-discovery. This begs the question: was the serpent actually deceiving Eve or simply presenting her with a difficult choice? By eating the fruit, Eve not only disobeyed God, but also made a decision that would lead her to a deeper understanding of what it is to be human, with all its complexities, pains, and pleasures. The act of eating the forbidden fruit can be interpreted not only as a mistake, but as the beginning of a new stage of growth and awareness for humanity. This new interpretation also suggests that the serpent played an important role in the development of humanity. If we go further, we can even think of the serpent as a figure who challenges the established order, something similar to Prometheus in Greek mythology. Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to human beings, granting them not only warmth, but also the power of knowledge and creation. Although Prometheus was punished for this, he is often seen as a tragic hero, someone who brought light, literally, to humanity. Could we see the serpent in the same light? As a being who, by tempting Eve, offered humanity the opportunity to know good and evil, to choose between right and wrong, and to become more than what they were at the beginning? When we think of it from this new perspective, the story of Adam and Eve gains much more depth. It is not just a lesson in disobedience. It is a narrative that explores the complexity of human choices and the search for wisdom, even when it involves risks. The serpent can be understood as the symbol of this human restlessness, of our constant desire to go further, to explore, to discover. If we reflect on this story in a more philosophical way, we can even see the serpent as a representation of the forces that push us out of our comfort zone, that challenge us to step out of our innocence and embrace the unknown. After all, growth often comes with mistakes, but it is these mistakes that make us who we are. This richer interpretation also leads us to question the nature of temptation. Is temptation always a bad thing? Or is it sometimes temptation that makes us evolve, learn, and grow? When we are tempted, we are forced to make decisions, and these decisions shape our character and define the course of our lives. Ultimately, the serpent can be seen as a multifaceted figure, a character who embodies both chaos and wisdom. He is not only the villain who introduced sin into the world, but also a figure who helps us reflect on human nature and our relentless pursuit of knowledge and freedom. Perhaps the serpent did more than simply corrupt. Perhaps it catalyzed a process of evolution that continues to this day. This more complex interpretation of the serpent in Genesis reminds us of the importance of revisiting old stories with fresh eyes. When we allow ourselves to question traditional interpretations and explore the deeper meaning behind texts, we end up discovering layers of richness and wisdom that often go unnoticed. And if you, like me, enjoy diving into these fascinating interpretations and discovering new meanings in ancient texts, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Here, we are always exploring the hidden side of biblical stories, unraveling mysteries and revealing interpretations that can transform the way you see these narratives. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and share them with your friends who also love this type of analysis. Together, we will continue this journey of learning and discovery.